Sweating in a bear suit. Sweating in a bear suit. I am sweating in a bear suit. Sweating in a bear suit and having lots of fun with my sweat.
Hello! Welcome to Sweating in a Bear Suit, the podcast where we meander and talk about work things.
And also, G, for those who are viewing it on YouTube, show off our amazing jumper that we bought.
We being
me, and
the classic.
For those of you that are listening, just imagine the best hoodie in the world, and it's got like changes in color, and then that's all you get. Go and look at it on YouTube. That's all you get to know.
You're bringing back tie-dye.
Yeah, it does feel tie-dye, doesn't it? It's good.
But I actually don't know that you can tie-dye that two colours. I don't know.
I don't know how they do it, but I love their science.
Yeah. Anyway, cool jumper.
Thank you.
We're talking about human connection today, but before we do, have you written a strapline to try and describe what on earth this thing is that we do?
Yes, I have.
Podcast?
Yes, I have.
Please.
Ladies and gentlemen, at the start of every podcast, I suggest a strapline to go with the wonderfully titled title of our podcast, Sweating in a Bear Suit. And this is what you would say. This is my suggestion to you, Gene. Next week, you're going to say, sweating in a bear suit. Taste the sweat. Live the taste. Live, taste, sweat.
That gave me a visceral reaction. Good try.
Yeah? Okay.
But possibly not this time.
Yeah. It does. That is sorry to everyone listening, but did you, listener, did you have the taste of sweat in your mouth when I said that? You probably did. I apologize. Yeah. Don't taste the sweat. Taste the cake. There you go. I fixed it up. Let's pretend that I never did it. And that's over. Next week I'll do a new one. What are we talking about, G?
We're talking about human connection in the workplace. Why is it a thing we care about? We've sort of built a company that aims to help you do human connection in your workplace. So we clearly think it's a good idea.
Yeah, we've got a vested interest in this.
Yes.
Look, we may not be the most, what's that word? The most unbiased of people because of that reason.
Yes. We have a horse in this race, but we put the horse in because we think it matters.
We put the horse in because, I defy someone to tell me that any group of people working together, there is not a decent element of human connection that makes that work function better. In some ways, it's sort of unfair what we're doing here because by definition, human connection is going to be what makes any group of people be able to work well on their task. It's not the only one, but bloody hell, you get that going well and it solves a whole bunch of problems.
Yes. Well, what do we mean when we talk about human connection? The things that come to mind for me aren't like everybody gets along swimmingly, isn't it lovely? Because often if people aren't having healthy conflict, they're not working effectively because then surely in a group of people you've got different ideas.
Mm.
But there's something in it being safe enough, those words we use a lot, amongst a group of people to share what they think because they know the humans that they work with.
Mm.
You can't, what do we say? You can't play with, or you can't work with someone you don't trust.
Mm.
We didn't say that. People like Lencioni have been saying it for a really long time.
Mm. And educators have been saying it for ages in educational theory. I forget who it was. A very smart theorist was like, I can't learn from someone I don't like. I can't learn from someone I don't trust. And you have to, there has to be a layer of trust. And it's interesting, isn't it? When we talk about human connection, I think it is a little bit like when people talk about the concept of psychological safety, I think when people hear those things, we're going to do some work on connection. What people think of is, I'm going to feel real warm and fuzzy. I'm going to think everyone's great. I'm going to feel all sweet and lovely about everyone. But human connection isn't about that. Often human connection is more about having such good connection that you can do really difficult things and go through things that are really hard. When we think of people that we're really close with, like friends we've had for a really long time, or family, if you're fortunate enough to have family that you're close with, I'm sure as you think back on that relationship, you can list a whole bunch of really difficult times that you've gone through with that person. And that's actually what human connection is all about. In terms of like talking about what it is, me and G had a wonderful time writing a little blog on this topic. And you will not be surprised to know that Stefan spent maybe 2-3 days trying to actually understand what was the full mechanisms of human connection and to really explain it. And I legitimately spent 3 days trying to come up with an explanation of what human connection is really about. And then I told it to G, and then G said 2 sentences straight away. And listener, I'm going to let you decide which is the one that makes more sense. So here's my logic. G, get ready with yours. Yeah. Okay. So I walked away and I was like, the thing about work, if you're working with more than one person, you're doing collaboration. When you're collaborating on anything, you're sharing ideas. When you share ideas, you need to communicate across consciousnesses. Now, no one freak out. This isn't like a party of 22-year-olds late at night at 4 a.m. in the morning when you're discussing consciousness. But literally, when you're communicating an idea, you have an idea in your brain that must be transmitted into the brain of another. And as you communicate across consciousnesses, you realize that consciousness is subjective, which is the whole my blue might be your pink. And so individuals have a host of different cultural influence, cognitive parameters, language understanding, like all of those things mean that as you're communicating across consciousness, that can get in the way of actually understanding what someone's idea is. So people have got to navigate those differences to share ideas. Now, authentic interpersonal human connection is the way in which human beings navigate those subjective differences between people as they're trying to share an idea with each other. So, my friends, that was Stefan's 3 days of sitting on a couch thinking about what human connection is. It will not surprise you that from the academic world, what I just gave you is the shortest version of what they write about this thing, because it's pages and pages. And then I said this to G. I was like, G, it took me 3 days because it's really complicated and blah, 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 blah. And I talked about consciousness, and then G went, and I was like, I dare you, I defy you, G, to tell me what human consciousness it is in a shorter version than that. And then you said...
Well, you didn't ask me to tell anybody what human consciousness was, because I argued, do you even need to talk about consciousness? And I reckon not. I reckon all you need is you can't trust someone you don't know, and functional teams are built on a foundation of trust. Therefore, to build a team that works, you need authentic human connection.
Which is annoying for me, because I do completely agree with that. I do agree with that, and I think it's actually useful for managers to hold in their head that what we're building on is a foundation of trust.
It's like trusting that you can say your opinion and you won't get fired, or trusting that you can take your autonomy and build something in line with where company priorities are,
Mm.
and know that you won't be punished for doing something that wasn't exactly what you were told to do, because leaders shouldn't have to tell you exactly what you're supposed to do, because it's not the Industrial Revolution anymore.
Mm.
We need to work in a way where people have the freedom to be creative together and have autonomy within that.
Mm.
And you got to trust the people around you in order to do that.
Yeah, I agree. I think the utility of getting deep into how consciousness and brains work is useful for when it starts to break down. I think there are organizations that we've talked to where you talk to them about how they're going, and they're actually going really well. They've naturally got human connection kind of threaded into how they work. It's sort of in their DNA. And you're like, you got this. Things go wrong, but they manage to work together. They've got a culture that grows. It doesn't stay in one place. Generally, these people don't know how they've actually done it. And it just is like, it's just functioning really well. What you notice, though, is when something goes different in a group and work starts to not be able to happen and people don't really know what's going on. And then I think it's good to kind of be able to pull apart how it's happening. And we're going to talk about someone who you're a big fan of, Lancioni, a bit later on, who has broken it down into like sort of explaining to you how these things, how a lack of trust can create a dysfunctional team, and the things that you see, which I think are is really useful. I think when we're talking about that idea of trying to be able to work really creatively so you can trust people, what I think of as the like modern, very good impulse to not micromanage people. So to actually allow people to be creative, come up with new ideas. When people are doing that, what they're really doing is they're attempting to predict what other people will think of their idea, both your customers and the people that you work with. And that's a magic trick that our brain does based on an algorithm that lets that brain make predictions about what other people think. For example, I write things that are going to go up on the website for Playgrounded, and I spend most of my time when I'm writing predicting what G will think of what I've written, so as I don't have to rewrite it 1,000 times every time G looks at it. Now, sometimes I get it wrong, sometimes I get it right. But what makes that work is the level of connection that we have. We've hung out with each other a lot. We've told each other stories. We've fought with each other. And we've reflected with each other on how we work. So I've built up a really strong algorithm in my brain based on our connection, so as I can kind of know what G thinks before G even speaks. And I think that, and when you talk about that G, that's when we have to talk about like consciousness. Like part of my job is to try to figure out how you process things, how you think. And part of your job is to do the same with me.
Absolutely. And it gets complicated when we are a small company, right? But how do you do it when you're a team within 50 teams within, and this is, I think, one of the ways that companies have tried to systematize this in the past is like, say, the company cares about and put values in place that then help people build trust in the company, because they know the decisions that the company's going to make are in line with the values that they've publicized. But I think the sad thing for human connection in the workplace is that it kind of, through some trust falls and bad team building exercises, for some, it's got a bad rap when someone like us bangs on about focusing on it. Not focusing on it, ensuring that it is something that can be prioritized amongst your work so that the other work goes faster. And I think it's because a lot of the exercises that have been done in the past, like I think pre-pandemic when it was all in person, team building was an activity people would do, but it turned into compulsory fun or escape rooms. Or, ropes courses or things that aren't necessarily enjoyable for people. And so because people are having that experience with it, they might not be building those connections with people to build the trust to help their team be more functional.
Your David Brent problem. For those of you that know The Office, David Brent, the manager of that one, But then, do you think that's the main reason why people might be hesitant to put a focus on human connection in the workplace? Because it was done badly in I'm going to say 80s, 90s and zeros?
I think it's one of many reasons. Like another is the part of it is the Industrial Revolution put work and play as being quite separate things. But there's also, as you grow into different roles, your expectation on professionalism changes, and then that often means people put up a barrier, which then often means that they're not being authentic, so therefore they can't connect with another human being. Some may have been punished for it in the past. Some may have pressures based on their inner critic or imposter that mean that they've got to put on a certain mask.
Or a feeling that some part of themselves isn't welcome in the workplace. I've experienced people who, because most of my work has been on building human connection in an authentic way, I've experienced people coming to me and saying, I'm not sure if I should talk about this element of who I am because I'm not sure if that will make people not like me, basically. And that was around things like faith, interestingly, and religion, which was really interesting because I think another reason why people are so sensitive to it is I think in an increasingly litigious society, there's a fear that I might say something wrong that is not allowed to be said at work. So it's better if I just sort of do nothing. And I'm not saying any of these things are bad or wrong. I'm just saying I think they contribute to why people don't naturally want to connect at work. Not everyone, but why a lot of workplaces seem really disconnected from each other.
Yeah, I think I am certainly not arguing that you cannot have a work self and a home self. Because, I've worked in HR roles where I had to toe company lines and also represent the values of the company and also be this trusted advisor. You can't be all that and be, the sweary, sometimes childish adult that I am.
Yeah.
But if you can bring enough to connect with the people at work in an appropriate way, then provided you're not hurting yourself or others in not sharing absolutely everything about you, because there are things that are not appropriate for work and that's okay, then I think you're doing an effective job, right? It's to get the work done in a way that isn't terrible.
Yeah. I think that's where it's about self-consent. What do I want to bring of myself to work? And I can choose to bring nothing of it to work. There will be consequences that come from that, but what does this human want to bring of themselves to work? What do I feel comfortable expressing? then I think there is societal norms about what you can express at work. And that's what we say when, like, whether something is appropriate or not. And those things shift and change and are incredibly subtle and are different across cultures. But there's those things as well. And then I think it's the capacity of the group of people you're working with to tolerate what it is that you bring. Because I think there are some things that are entirely appropriate to bring to work, but sometimes workplaces are like, I don't want to do this because it's a bit scary. And I think it's that anxiety about connecting to people and the self and whether I'll be accepted. I think which has been going on since we were little kids going to school and scared that people wouldn't like us. Like, all of that stuff is in there as well.
Agreed. I think the example you gave before about people, and I'm saying people because I've got multiple examples of not wanting to share their faith in a workplace for fear of how that group would accept them. And that, to me, it's a really, really interesting example that something which is so personal and is based in, being good to other humans would be feared as, someone would be fearful that sharing it might mean they will be judged. It's a really interesting nuance of cultural norms.
It's interesting as well because in the circumstances that I'm thinking about, these people were not worried that someone else would be like, you're a jerk. Just that it might make people uncomfortable and less able to be their friend. And they didn't know. Now, what's really weird is I myself am not a person of faith. I would describe myself as an atheist. But in the working relationships that I've had, I know of people's faiths because it naturally comes up in my conversations with them because I want to build connection with them. And if something is so integral as their faith and what they believe, it's going to come up in conversations. Even if it's just like, what did you do on the weekend? And eventually you're going to find a thing. Now, those things happen because there's enough trust built that I want to know about them. I want to learn things about who they are, and I want them to learn things about me. But that's because, like, I honestly believe that we all can do a better job together when our connection is so solid that we can predict each other's behavior, we can have fights, we can do all that stuff. And so I go out of my way to build that connection with every person that I meet, really, not just within my working system.
The way you describe predicting people's behavior and so we can have fights is a really interesting dichotomy, contradiction, something. Because you would expect to avoid fights if you knew how people would respond, particularly in a workplace where fighting is not, particularly not encouraged. And I think that's a slight difference in how I think of human connection. It's not entirely predicting somebody's behavior because I think about it more as I trust that whatever reaction I get will be fine.
Yeah.
Because we will work it out. Because maybe it's prediction, but I trust that through the conflict, we will be able to resolve it. I'm not fearful of ending the working relationship because I've got something wrong.
Predicting someone's behavior makes it sound more Machiavellian than it is. And I think it's actually something that we always do. We just have it going on in the background all the time. When we think about, like, what dinner would someone like? What would my boss think of this thing? Like those background processes are always happening. Though I will say this, like, because I care about persuasion, if I'm thinking about something I want to do and I know I have to win people across to that idea potentially, I will think about the way that I will present that information and what I know of that person and how they like information being presented. And if you have developed a really strong connection with that person, you know more stuff. And then also you're given more forgiveness when you get things wrong, because the connection is so strong that they understand your intention more than what you actually do, and they can go, that was a bit not good, but I get that Stefan doesn't mean that thing. So I think this is why, like, I think it is so vital. And I think if I were to pick one thing that an organization should focus on, it's building the connection between all of the people, because this thing solves so much problems. It helps you be more creative together, but it also helps you when something inevitably goes wrong. Like and they've given it different names over time. It used to be called esprit de corps. In the military, I think it still is. It might not be, but that feeling in a group, that a group is working well together. And I think it's vital for any leader of any team to be focusing on how connection can be built and building systems that increase the connection. And it's one of those things that it's like what do I want to say? It's like a thing that when you show it care repeatedly over time, it reaps big rewards into the future, but it doesn't give you a distinct advantage tomorrow. So it's one of those things that's put off all the time. There's a word for that, G. What do people call that?
Kicking the can down the road? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe kicking the can down. It's like the opposite of it. Like, I think people don't work on this stuff in organizations because it's much easier to be like, we need to work on the launch strategy of our product and change it so that tomorrow we get dollars coming in the door. Whereas the idea that we're going to spend some time figuring out our human connection infrastructure, so as down the road we've got such a high-performing team that problems get solved before they even become problems. I don't think people want to spend their time doing that. I don't think it makes sense in the monkey brain that wants a solution right now to a problem right now.
Well, it's very hard to measure the impacts. You can measure the impacts, but they take a while. And you can also find other reasons for those results. For example, retention, engagement, even revenue. You could say that it goes up when people are working well together. You can always find another reason for it. So it's a fundamental business problem we have in thinking about how to reprioritize and stop procrastinating the connection piece.
Yeah, my call out to any economist listening, and this might have already been done, but I'm pretty sure it hasn't. Can someone please create a measure that measures the ROI on like human connection, joy, and play in the workplace? Because economists tell me you can measure everything. No one has ever been able to. They go like, yeah, that can be measured. And they go like, how? And they go like, someone else will do it. I need someone to do it now, please.
There's a lot of both commercial and academic study on engagement in the workplace and engagement with task. And there's a bit of how I feel. Am I having a good time when I'm doing that in engagement? But it's still too far removed from the bottom line for a lot of people. So as we saw over the last few years, when the COVID tech boom started going, oh, whoops, we spent too much money. That was not real life conditions. Got to go firing people. We're seeing it in politics at the moment. The answer is to cut, not to invest. And connection is an investment because you've got to pay some time. Not much money, just time, which costs money in order to get the rewards. I think you get rewards pretty quickly, but those rewards then don't translate to dollars for a while. because nothing translates to dollars that quickly.
Mm. If I'm in my organization and I'm looking around my organization, how do I know that I might need to spend a bit of time thinking about human connection and how it's working?
Leoncione's pyramid is great.
Great, do it.
The bottom chunk of the pyramid is trust. If there is an absence of trust, you will get a fear of conflict. And then if you got a fear of conflict, you will get a lack of commitment. So if people aren't having robust conversations with each other, and they're just kind of letting things go, then you will get unlikely that people go, I'm putting my neck out for this feature or this marketing campaign or this approach. You just get people pottering on, which also leads to a avoidance of accountability. So if you've got a problem in your team where you're not really clear who owns anything, no one's putting up their hand, I made a mistake, or I own that, or hey, you over there, I thought you had that thing, then perhaps there's a lack of trust. And if you're not getting results. So if you go, oh, that team over there, they're just not getting anywhere.
Mm.
Do they have accountability problems? Do they have commitment problems? Do they have conflict? Because I dare say it was all underlying with lack of trust.
Yeah, and what I love about the results one is it's not just about like, are we not getting results? It's also like, we might be getting results, but are we like blind to what metrics actually tell us if we're getting results? Like, I think that is, and that's why I love the triangle, because to me that's about like, fundamentally we don't trust ourselves to get work done, so we don't even want to measure it. Even if we're good, we don't want to measure it because we don't trust ourselves to actually do it.
And we're so fearful of what if we're wrong. That's a real...
Yeah.
Because wrong creates conflict, and wrong is I committed to a thing.
Yeah.
And I'm accountable to it.
So what do? If you want to work on human connection in your team, and I think everyone should always want to work on it, even when they're good, you should want to continue to maintain them, because human connection is not a set and forget situation. We think there are a few things that you can do. We're always going to start by saying, if you think this type of work needs to be done and you are in a position to do some work, it's always going to be good just to spend some time talking with people, because even just talking to people about how connected they feel to each other in an organization is going to increase connection happening. But we think there's 3 things that you could think about. Having people in your teams share stories about why they do what they do is really powerful. Getting people to connect to their intrinsic motivation for being part of that team, and really allowing people to express that in whatever form that takes. Now, how do you go about doing that? It can be part of an onboarding process or a welcoming process as people enter the team. It can also be in the times that you hang out together and the times that people are talking about their work, and when you notice that people are having fun or enjoying themselves in their work, getting them to talk about what it is that they're finding really fun. Stories are really powerful, because it imprints that information in people's minds in a really vital way that helps people to build that predictive algorithm in their brain, because I understand why people do what they do. Second is, and I'm using the term all hands to mean any meeting where a whole team comes together to talk about the work. Yeah. So it could be an all hands for a whole company, or it could be, a team of teams within a company, but just, those big meetings where everyone gets together that often, I'm going to say 80% of people dread. Death by all hand. Make those all hands not terrible. And you do this by allowing people to be real humans with each other. for sure you talk about the work, but you allow them to bring their humanness to those meetings. Now, we can't tell you what that is because every group is different, but we can tell you when it's really bad. And when it is really bad is when you have people showing up generally petrified to express a feeling and are just standing there to be witnessed being in the meeting but not actually paying attention to each other. That is not good for human connection. That makes people feel like there is less connection in your group. Whereas having all hands where lots of different people speak, where people can ask questions, also where people can be a bit weird. There is currently a discussion going on in the world of organizational dynamics, and people are realizing that the concept of weird is pretty awesome because weirdness is celebrating individuality, because we really, all of us are weird. And the idea that allowing something to be quirky or of the people or weird allows people to access the work and bring themselves to it because they feel like they can be just as weird. Now, this is usually best led by people who are at the top of authority because it's a bit weird it's a bit hard to ask someone who is at the lowest authority to be the weirdest in the room. But when you do that, people can bring themselves. And we all know this because if you have ever seen a children's TV show, the presenter in that show is always the weirdest person in the room. And they go really weird so that the kid can come in and start being a bit weird too. So all hands that allow people to be humans with each other, have a bit of weird, and generally allow people to speak and contribute are going to build connection in your team. The last thing is reflecting with your team on moments of connection. So we're going to say this all the time. Reflective practice is the best way for a group to work on themselves. And all you do is you bring attention to a thing. So reflective practice that talks about when have you felt connected to people in the team? When have you not felt connected? What makes you feel more comfortable and connected with people? All of that work is going to increase connection in your team. And the final thought is if you're a leader thinking you want to work on human connection, you should do all of those things first. So you should be the one that initiates sharing stories, bringing the weird to an all hands, or reflecting about connection with other people. Because if you can't do it first, your team isn't going to be able to do it. They're my words, G.
Well, on that, should we leave the people with the thoughts about connection?
Great.
And the workplace. Let's go make some.
Yeah, go do it. Fuck.
Let's go make some flying cars.
Oh, that was so smooth.
We're so smooth.
That was nice, wasn't it?